Hello, everybody, and welcome to it's episode 7 of season 3 of Aids to Scouting. And tonight we have this guy you can see right there, Michael Smith, who I've never actually seen before, but I've been in touch with him for years. And he writes a political column, and it's kind of political and philosophical column called Unlicensed Punditry. In other words, so he's a pundit, and he's got a lot of listeners, and I'm hoping, and readers, and I'm sort of hoping a lot of them will tune in here because they haven't seen him either, and I hope they're not disappointed. Of course, Michael is not as old as I am, but I have to keep reminding myself, smile, because a scout is cheerful, and we older men look a lot better when we smile. And so, any rate, now what I'm going to do is, Michael, you were not a scout, were you? A Boy Scout?
No, sir, I was not. I was
Yes,
not.
but I know from reading and a lot of things you've talked about, you grew up in rural Mississippi, and you did a lot of outdoor living. Uh, t- t- Tell us about that.
Well,
I'd
I'm
like to
actually
hear about that.
I'm actually sort of a scout by proxy, and I say
Yes.
that because we lived out in a rural area, pretty good ways out from any central, I mean any population center. And I grew up on a farm, and on the farm you do farm stuff. But my dad was in the Army in World War II. He was in the Corps of Engineers, and I actually he gave me his Army Field Manual and his Corps of Engineers Manual when I was young, and I devoured that. I mean, I read it from cover to cover, learned the knots. I mean everything. And then my cousin, who was a scout, who actually lived in Memphis, gave me his Boy Scout handbook, and so I plowed through that, and it perfectly dovetailed with things that my family taught me to be. And
Yep.
I thought, man, this is good stuff. But I was a free range child before we knew what free range children were.
Oh, I
Um,
knew what it was when I was, I was born in 1948, and so when I down in South Georgia, and people maybe have never, you were in North Mississippi, weren't you?
yep, yep,
People have no idea what that place looks like until they go there, and they see
yeah,
those vast areas that are so flat.
yep.
It's amazing. But it was pretty flat in South Georgia. But we would go out with guns and shotguns and rifles when we were 10 and 11 years old
Oh
and
yeah,
hunting.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I got my first shotgun, 410. I got my first shotgun at 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was just part of the way we grew up.
Yep.
We had guns in the house. We knew to respect them. We treated them with. We didn't. My dad always said, and it's the golden rule of guns is you don't point it at anything you don't intend to shoot.
Yep.
And yeah, so I grew up running all over the Red Clay Hills in North Mississippi. When I was 12 or 13 years old, my parents trusted me to camp alone. I mean, basically, I would grab my dog and we would head out on the weekends and spend the night out in the woods somewhere. Not even really. I mean, you talk about these helicopter parents these days on where their kids are every 5 minutes of the day and all that kind of stuff. I mean, my parents didn't know where I was for days on end, but they trusted me. I mean, they taught me things, and they knew that I knew how to handle myself, and that I was careful, and I was trustworthy, and I knew how to handle a weapon. I took my shotgun with me when I went.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I used to go and just basically stay gone for a day or two at a time. I mean, I never did go out and stay for a week, but I would go out and basically use the Boy Scout manual to set up a camp, to build a campfire, to pitch a tent. I mean, those kind of things. And even in the wintertime when I went hunting, a lot of times I would go hunting over a weekend. I would leave after school on Friday afternoon and then come back on Sunday afternoon, but camp out. And I've camped out in snow. I've camped out in rain. I've camped out with, in the South, when you get rain, you get a lot of it at one time.
Yep.
So having to go through all of that. But no, man, I saw the value in scouting then without even being a real scout because I lived it. I mean, that's the way we live.
Did you live in that part of Mississippi where when Mississippi River rises, it covers a lot of land, or were you a little bit uphill from that?
We were up in the hills, but now we got flooding too. I mean, we were on the banks of the Tallahatchie River, so
Hmm.
a lot of the tributaries and everything that flowed into the Tallahatchie, and the Tallahatchie flows into Mississippi. When the Mississippi backs up, it's like traffic. Everybody backs up from that point going back. So yeah, we've had floods up in the area too, but we had a lot of flat land. I mean, my brother still lives on our farm down in Mississippi, and we have a lot of what we call bottom land. I mean, I know that's
Yeah.
you
Well, tell people what bottomland is.
well, bottom land is typically the flat area in between the hills where either a creek or a small tributary flows through it, and it's farmable. Basically, you can grow stuff on it. It's almost like a mini delta, I guess, if you want to couch it as something. But bottoms are flat lands where you've got, and it doesn't have to be bare, it doesn't have to be farmland. It can be groves of trees, those kind of things. I've hunted squirrels in flat land. I've duck hunted in flat land and in bottoms. It's typically called a river bottom because it's near
Yeah.
a tributary where it can get sediment and build the land up. So
Well, one thing that I found interesting about bottomland is it's a great place to find arrowheads.
oh
And
yeah, yeah,
because no telling how, the population of North America was pretty pretty high from time to time before
yeah.
the Europeans came and introduced all kinds of diseases. And of course, you're probably familiar with that ancient history of the mounds and the
Yeah,
Cohelia, or whatever the serpent mounds and all that.
yeah.
Yep. So, all right. So you grew
No,
up
we,
there.
we we did that every spring when my dad and my grandfather would get out and they'd turn over the land to get it ready for planting.
Yep.
One of the big things that the kids would do is the first time all the dirt was turned over, we hit the fields looking for arrowheads.
Yep.
And it just made sense because it's good hunting land to start with. I mean, a
Yep.
lot of the animals come to the water, but a lot of the Indians camped in that area too. I mean, they lived in that particular area.
Yep.
And it was not uncommon for us to, I haven't done it in 1,000 years now, but you'd come up with a half a dozen of really decent arrowheads just in one trip in the spring when they started cultivating the land.
Yep. And boys, 100 years ago and 150 years ago, that their boys were finding even more.
Oh yeah,
When
yeah,
they
yeah,
had that deep plowing in the early days of the South, and that
yep,
heavy rain that knocks, and the arrowheads will lay flat on the
yep,
ground, and
yep.
all that. Did y'all have any like Choctaw, or aren't there some what do you call them, intact tribes that lives in Mississippi? The Choctaw,
Uh,
I believe.
there actually are now. We had the Chickasaw, Choctaw, and the Natchez, and
Hmm.
and and pretty much those three tribes in not just North Mississippi, but all the way down to South Mississippi too.
Yep.
And we have a couple of reservation lands here.
Hmm.
We actually have. I mean, Mississippi's not a gambling state, but we have gambling over in Tunica, Mississippi, which is basically one of those things where you build a gambling thing on a barge and you let it float out. Technically, it's in the Mississippi River, and it's out of the state. But we do have some retention, some Native American retention here. But most of the tribes here got caught up in the Trail of Tears when the Indians were driven back out to the reservations, moved all out to Oklahoma
Yep.
and out in the plains.
Well, all right. Now we've sort of gone to that, but what was your education, and what did that lead to, and professionally in your
Yeah.
life?
Well, I went to, I mean, basically elementary school and high school in New Albany, Mississippi. Grew up there. Uh, Probably would have been voted the least likely to ever leave town because I love small town life. But I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be a chemical engineer to start out, and then at that time you had to take German because a lot of the chemistry texts were written in German, and you had to pass 2 semesters of German, which I found virtually impossible for me to do. So that chemical engineering was out. So I got into mechanical engineering, and then I got interested in business. So I actually have degrees in finance and economics, and I need about 8 hours of classroom time to have a full degree in mechanical engineering. But I've actually been and I went to Mississippi State. I looked at Mississippi State or Georgia Tech because at the time Georgia Tech had the best engineering school in the South. And I wound up choosing staying closer to home, so I went to Mississippi State. Graduated from Mississippi State, went to work for a defense company, believe it or not, in my hometown. We made a lot of defense components for most of the armories around. Twin City Army Ammunition Plant up in Minneapolis. A lot of different things. We did. Our big product was the shell casings for the A-10, the Gatling gun on the A-10 aircraft. And I cut my teeth as a line engineer right out of college, right on that line, doing the engineering work, doing the quality work for that production line. So that led into the company. We got into automotive airbags because automotive airbags at the time were set off by sodium azide, which created a small explosion to blow the bag up in the car. So we built the metal components for airbags, and I worked in automotive for, gosh, probably 15 years or so. And then I got headhunted out of there to run a company down in Panama City, Florida, and I got over in the oil and gas business. So I wound up in the oil and gas business for about the last 20, 25 years or so. That's when I started living and moving and traveling all over the world. And I've had opportunities that nobody would have ever thought a redneck from Red Clay Hills in Mississippi would ever have. But I lived in the UK for 3 years.
Where did you live in? Where in the UK?
I lived in Edinburgh, Scotland. We lived about a block and a half down from Edinburgh Castle, right in the middle of Edinburgh, in Scotland. We had a manufacturing facility in Rosyth, just outside of Edinburgh. But I lived in Edinburgh, 15-minute drive to work. But had the opportunity to run a North Sea business over there. Spent a lot of time in in Western Africa, Equatorial Guinea, just pretty much all over the coast of Africa. A lot of time in the Middle East. Spent a lot of time in the UAE and in Kuwait and in Egypt and Saudi Arabia. I spent 3 years going in and out of China, setting up joint ventures and doing business over in China. So I've had a little bit of everything, and I've traveled I think we've lived in like 9 different places around the United States too, all the way from Florida to Michigan, and from Salt Lake City all the way to South Carolina. So we've been pretty much all over the place. Had a great opportunity to see a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, work in a lot of different environments. Made a lot of friends along the way. And that kind of plays into my perspective on philosophy and a lot of other things too, because I've seen and done a lot of things. Spent a lot of time in India as well. I mean, I've spent a year working in and out of India, setting up joint ventures and supply chains over there as well. So I've had a taste of a little bit of everything. But I had a young engineer one time that actually asked me what I did to get to where I was. And I told him, I said, I really didn't have a plan. I said, I followed the dictum that my maternal grandfather, I lived like a stone's throw from my grandmother and maternal grandfather when I was growing up. And both of my parents were working. My dad had a couple of businesses he was trying to get off the ground. My mom worked too. So I spent a lot of time at the knee of my grandfather. He taught me a lot of things. But one of the most important things that he taught me is to be prepared. And again, ties back to the Boy Scouts. But he said, be ready for any opportunity. Always be learning, always be moving forward, be ready for that next opportunity, because if you miss it, it may never come back again.
That for some reason, I keep thinking, going back to the Scout law, and you remember the first Scout law is trustworthy.
Yep.
And when he was talking about Army scouts, and you send a scout out to search out the enemy and count their numbers and all that, you have to be able to trust him.
Yep.
And I'll bet you that was a key to your success,
was
that when you worked for people, they could trust you to do the job.
I followed the 12 points of the 12 points of Scout law without really even knowing it, because that's how I was taught how to live. I mean, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I mean, went through all of them. And I mean, I remember those today because
Yes.
I learned them from the Boy Scout handbook. But that I think that's one of the most important things that we miss these days is that the kids growing up now, and here we go. I'm 67 years old, so I'm talking about kids and all this kind of stuff. Of course,
Yeah.
people who are 50 years old are still kids to me. But
Well, you
it's
are to me because I'm what,
it's
11 years older than you. So, but
you
go ahead.
look around, and a lot of aspects of those, or a lot of those aspects are actually missing from how we train our kids. I mean, my kids grew up the same way I grew up, and I gave them the same lessons that my parents and my grandparents gave to me. And all of them are doing well. They're all out on their own. I mean, they've got their own careers. I got a son that just got out of the military who's going to work in cyber security here. He was a cyber warfare expert for a sergeant that ran a cyber warfare team for the Army. My oldest son works for ESPN, travels all over the country, does the computer graphics for College Game Day and the NBA and the NFL, a lot of different things. My daughter was trained as a lawyer. Actually chose not to practice law, and now she works for a kind of a guy that I would call a serial entrepreneur. He goes
Yep.
out and builds companies and builds them up to about 3 or 4 years, and then he spins them off. And if he spins off the one that she's been working on with him right now, she'll be worth about 10 times what I'm worth right now because she's got a bunch of stock options. But they're all doing well, and they all learned the same kind of things. We taught them those kind of things because it's extremely important. And that's how you make. I'll tell you, my grandfather. I don't think I'm aware of a single contract he ever signed in his life because everything he did was on a handshake, and people knew his word was his bond, and he was as good as his word. And that he told me one time, and I'll never forget it. We were talking about it. He was getting on up. He was in his 90s then, and we were talking about it, about just life in general and the things he's seen. And he told me, he said, he said, the only thing you really have at the end of your life, and the only thing you leave behind is your reputation. And you should never do anything to damage your reputation. As long as you follow the things that we've taught you as you were growing up, you'll never have to worry about that. And I've actually never worried about that because I've done everything from shop floor engineering all the way up to being president and CEO of companies. And I've left a couple of those CEO positions here over the last few years as I've gotten close to getting retired. And I've replaced myself with the people who believe the same things that I believe in. And I know that they can be trusted. I would never put them in that position if I didn't know that they could be trusted. So you're absolutely right, Walker. I mean, that is one of the key points to where I've been successful. The times that I've failed, it's been because I haven't followed my own rules. And maybe I took a chance on something that I really knew better than to take a chance on. But that's how you build that. That's not only how you build a career, that's how you build a person.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, that's how you build a person. That's how you build somebody that is of value to society and that you can always count on. I know I have a small circle of friends. I don't have a lot of friends. I'm mostly an introvert. I mean, you
I
probably
don't
wouldn't
believe
know it.
that.
I know, but I am. I really am. I'm not comfortable in large crowds, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I can do it, but I don't like to do it.
Yep.
And I've had the Myers-Briggs test, personality test administered 3 or 4 times, and it always comes out that I'm a borderline introvert. I can be outgoing and gregarious if I have to, but I'd rather not.
Well,
I'd rather
that's
be solitary.
that's one of the things I like about the whole scouting system is that a child that's not a real extrovert can find niches within that, with that merit badge or that he might be better at nature study type things. And another one might be
Yep.
better at the engineering. We have now, like the scout camp that we have here that in my council in Georgia, they have an emphasis on the trades now with
Yep.
welding. I mean,
Oh yeah.
and boy, then that's a big thing these days is look,
Listen,
AI's going to wipe out a lot, but not the trades.
I was talking to my sons the other day. We were catching up, and I told them that given if I grew up in a period of time like today, I'm not sure I would even go to college. I mean, I when I grew up you grow up on a farm, you learn to do a lot of things. I can weld, I can braze, I can I'm a carpenter. I mean, my dad had a construction company. I grew up doing that through high school, and I worked part-time in college to work my way through college as well. So, the old saying is, what is it? A jack of all trades and a master of none,
Yeah.
but better that than a master of none. I mean, that there's a codicil to that. That quote goes on that, and basically it says you're better to learn a lot of different things and maybe not be the best in the world at it than you are to basically know one thing or not know anything. But one point I wanted to touch on is what you just said, and I think it's something that's extremely important. And it's also more of a it actually gets back to the scouting experience and the business experience and career experience. Is scouting is goal oriented. I mean, that's one of the things that the medals do and the projects do and the Eagle Scout projects do. They're goal oriented. And that's what you have to be if you're going to be successful in life. You really have to be goal oriented. And scouting
Well,
teaches you how to do that.
well, before we get away from that, you said something about reputation. And,
Yep.
and we all know how easy it is to lose reputation. We older men know that. We've seen it happen. And my grandfather said to my father, who said to us, he says that a man, if he should never do something dishonest because his father can never quite get over that. And it's just something to bear in mind. I mean, we might do things that were foolish or dangerous or whatever, but to do something really dishonorable, like essentially lie, cheat, or steal, is something that a father an honorable father would find hard to forgive.
Yep.
It's
And
and
that's you and I were talking before the broadcast here about why we just moved back. We've lived away from our hometown for 35 years, and we just moved back to Tennessee to be closer to our home down in Mississippi. We still got a farm down there, but um, that is something that I always thought about. Is I never wanted to do anything that would embarrass my family. And that is a real mitigating factor for me when I go into any kind of negotiation or discussion, or I make a promise to somebody. I never want to put myself in a position where I would embarrass my grandfather or my dad, my mom. I mean, it's such a huge motivator that I would just never do that kind of stuff.
well, I'm sure I disappointed mine one
Oh,
way
I
and
know I
another
did mine too.
many a time. But that it also I'm sort of thinking that one of the issues of modern life, and you and I can talk about modern life, is that I worry sometimes about the young people being raised to aspire to having children and to take care of those children and to do that which it takes to raise children properly.
Yeah.
uh, to have them be part of a family, a loving situation, and give them the time that children need, and and uh, and then have that aspiration for girls to have the aspiration to grow up to be mothers and to
Yeah.
have, I grew up in a large family. We had 7 kids all together, and that was a great experience. But boy, there are not that many families around that have more than 4.
No,
And
no, there's not.
but it was wonderful. And then also, I think the expanded family. I think we so many people are moving all the time that you'll have like 1 or 2 children in a family, and just their parents, and they don't have the ameliorating effect of aunts and uncles
Yeah.
and the loving thing of grandparents. Who there's a
Well,
great saying I like, Michael. It says a person who says nobody's perfect has never been a grandparent.
no kidding.
I,
I'm just finding that out because we just had our first grandchild she turns 2 on the 12th of this month, and we've got it. We're right in the middle of a renovation project too, but we're actually gearing up for a birthday party for her as well
yeah.
here too. But you're absolutely right. I mean, and the greatest I thought about this a lot, and my parents have passed, my wife's parents have passed, But while my father-in-law was alive, I told him, I said, my greatest regret in life was moving with my children away from their grandparents. I mean, it's probably not the greatest regret, but it's got to be up in the top 10 for sure.
Yep.
Because I know how I feel about my grandchild, and I've only got one right now. I mean, my boys, I don't know if they'll ever be anything there. They're having too good of a time. But the thing about it is you're right. I mean, we scatter to the four winds. I mean, my generation basically was taught you got to go here, you got to go there, you got to, to climb the ladder of success, you got to go all these different places and do all these different things. And I bought into that, and I went and did all those things, and I had success, but that success comes at a cost, and that cost is you lose contact with family. And that's one of the reasons we actually moved. We finally decided to move. We lived in Utah. We lived all over the world, and Scotland, and like I said, all over in a lot of different places around the states too. But we finally came back close to home because that pull of family was just so strong, and we felt it was just the right time for us to come back to a place where we had the cousins, we had the nephews, we had the nieces, we had brothers and sisters-in-law and things like that, where we could be a family again. That was one of the things that my wife's grandparents always insisted on from her family, is that every holiday, no matter where you were, unless you were in a hospital somewhere, you came down to Mississippi, to West Point, Mississippi, to have Christmas, to have Thanksgiving, to have some birthdays. I mean, those kind of things, to come in and actually be together as a family. And that is so important. And we don't have that. We don't have that today.
Well,
We
some people do, but but
yeah,
now you're back. And
yeah.
my parents, I grew up. My mother died when I was young, like 3 years old, and he had three children, and he married a widow whose husband had been a dentist and served in the Navy and all that during the war. But so she had two children, and then they had two more. So that's why it added up to seven. But they were always um, encouraging and insistent and helpful to us go visit our cousins
Hmm.
and our grandparents, and to have the families blend together. And they were just, my parents and my stepmother and my father were just wonderful people. And so it was just it's kind of that's what, when I'm saying when I'm thanking God for my many blessings, the having good parents is just right up there at the top. It's wonderful.
I keep trying to talk my kids into it. I told them, they asked me one time what I would like is if I had everything the way I would like to have it. I said, if I could have it the way I wanted it, I would have a compound where every one of you three kids had a house on it, and we had a house on it. We all were right there together. I mean,
Yep.
I would have them back in the house. I mean, I would do the whole Walton Mountains thing if I could have them all come back in and live at the house. I would do that.
Yep.
But I miss that part of my life, and we got that back with my grandchild. My daughter moved with us, and she's looking for a house, and I'm really not encouraging her to get out and do
Nah,
that
no, no, no. In
because
fact, I believe
I
that
get
that granddaughter's named Poppy. I believe that's
it
her.
is
And
it
I'm
is.
kind of surprised you don't have her in the room and show her off to
Oh,
us.
brother, it's bedtime for Poppy right now. She's had a full day, and it's time for her to go to bed.
I
But
understand.
But it is, I told my daughter, I said, the greatest blessing that you have ever given me, and you will never have to give me another gift as long as I live, is letting me be part of that little girl's life, seeing her every morning when she wakes up and seeing her go to bed every night. I said that I couldn't ask for anything. I couldn't ask for a gift greater than that. There's not enough gold in the world that would satisfy me after going through this for the past couple of years. It's been amazing.
And one thing that I find really amazing is when you watch a child that age and you study what they are doing, they are busy. They're
Oh
learning
yeah,
all the time. And it's like
yeah.
their job. And it's like they take their job very seriously. And
Oh,
they'll sit down there, and I've seen a child just sit there. My little granddaughter will sit there and she'll repeat a word and she'll pronounce it and until she gets it right. And they don't mind you correcting their grammar or
no.
their spelling or anything, because they know that they're learning, and that's their job, is to learn stuff. And
That's
they're
the other.
great that way.
That's the other thing that I think that parents sometimes forget, is that If you think that child is not watching you 24/7, you are terribly mistaken, because they don't miss anything.
No.
And they learn. I mean, that you're right. That their brain is like a sponge at this age. I mean, they're soaking up experiences. They're soaking up knowledge. And if you start them out right, my grandfather used to always have another saying too. I mean, I use all his corn pone idioms from that I remember. I've given them all to my kids as well. But he always said, he said, if you start wrong, you'll end wrong.
Mm.
You may fix it, but it's going to take you a lot of extra time, and it's going to take you a lot of extra expense to do it. But if you start wrong, you end wrong, and it's the same way it is with rearing children too. If you start wrong, you end wrong.
Well, that's one of the things I like about the scouting programs, and this includes Girl Scouts and Brownies and all that. But that Cub Scouts and those Brownies and that little young child that's 5 or 6 years old, you put them at. They all want to be part of a little group. They want to be
Yep.
part of a little gang. So the question is, are they going to be in a bad gang or a good gang?
Yep.
And a good gang has a set of morals or a little scout law or whatever. And remember, the Cub Scout motto is "Do your best."
Yeah.
And I've said that to the older scouts. I said, if you're going to put on a skit at a campfire, think about that. Go back to Cub Scout and do your best. Don't do a halfway job. If for an extra minute you can do a good job.
Yeah. Give it all you got.
Yeah.
Yep. Give it all you got.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of all you got, you're producing one heck of a lot of writing these days, and it's called the Punditry, unregistered,
Unlicensed punditry.
unlicensed. Why did you choose a name like
I
unlicensed punditry?
I coined that name back when we started with this mess on COVID, and the fact that you had to be, everybody wanted you. There were forces out there that wanted you to have a vaccination document to be able to travel and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I just figured, well, you know what? I'm just going to be unlicensed with this whole thing, and that it kind of stuck in my head as to what it. I'm not a professional pundit. I'm not. I'm not.
By the way, for any foreigners that are foreign-born people that English isn't their first language, a pundit is a person with opinions who says what those opinions are and frames them in their writings or their speech to set them forth in a logical and convincing, hopefully a convincing manner. And that's what Michael does. He writes. You must. I was thinking you must use AI. You're producing so much.
I actually don't. I mean, I do use AI as an editing guide. And I do, when you say use AI, I don't use AI to write anything for me. I do use AI for research. I do use it to help me with English is basically my second language. Mississippi Redneck's my first language. So but I had a fantastic. My best friend in high school, his mom was a senior English teacher, and she's the one that taught me the power of the written word. So if anybody wants to blame anybody for what I do, it's her. But really, Walker, the people always say, how do you write so much? You write something every day. Well, yeah, I do, and it comes out of a lifetime of learning. I read a lot as a kid. I still read and consume a lot of information. I look at like 6 or 7 different newspapers every morning when I get up. I relate that to the experiences that I've had over the past 50 or 60 years in business and in career and education. And there may be like 5 or 6 things that are out there that are humming around in my brain that are unconnected. And then I wake up one morning and all of a sudden I see something that connects all those things. And then it's like therapy for me. I have to sit down and get it out, get it written down on paper, and then once I can get it written on paper, then I can move on. But I do it as a matter of course. I mean, it's something that I've just got in the habit of doing. I've been doing this for 20 years. I mean, right now I've got like, I don't know, 56,000 followers on Facebook, and I've got a active Substack page. The unlicensed punditry thing
How do we find is somebody that's watching this, if they want to just check out your Facebook page, how is that found?
It's on Facebook. I am at Utah Prez, UTAHPREZ, and that's a weird thing because I was president of a company in Utah. They stuck me with an email that was utahprez at blah blah blah.com. So I stuck with that, but at Utah Prez on there and on X on Twitter, the same one. But you can find me at Unlicensed Punditry. It's michaelsmith.substack.com.
michaelsmith.substack.com. I believe Substack is a system, isn't it? So
It
you plug
is.
in and you write, and because
It's
a
it's
lot of people use
basically
it.
yes, it's basically a platform for pundits, authors, anybody who wants to, philosophers, anybody who wants to expound on anything in public and have it, printed and distributed out. So, and it's, you can take free subscriptions. I write a lot of stuff that I put up for free. I do get paid on some of the stuff because I do have members that I've got 3,000 or so people that are part of my Substack paid cadre, and they get special stuff that doesn't get released directly to the free subscribers for maybe a week or so. I always release everything, but I don't necessarily do it right away.
Yep.
But Facebook is kind of the same way. I mean, I'm actually making money on Facebook off of advertisements. Once you get to a certain level, Facebook kind of forces you into a digital creator slot that they've created, and I don't have any choice about the advertisements and the number of them or who does it, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's basically the Facebook thing, but it allows me to reach more people. And I try to the main reason that I write is because I felt alone for a long time. And then I started reading things that told me that I wasn't the only one that were thinking those kind of things. And that's kind of why I do it now, is because I want to make sure that if there's other people out there that are thinking something, that they know that they're not the only one thinking it. You're not alone. I mean, I don't do it to validate it. I don't validate anybody's opinion. I don't do it to say that I'm right about every single thing, because I'm not. But it's the idea that I get it out there and then we have a discussion about it. And then hopefully both of us improve through that process. So I've done that. And now that I'm retired, I have more time on my hands.
Yeah.
So obviously everybody gets to, hear about what my thoughts are, whether they want to or not.
So for those who are listening and not even watching our aging faces, it's Unlicensed Punditry. And that's how it can be found on the Substack. And you could probably just do a quick search.
Yeah.
Or Michael
you could actually just search for Unlicensed Punditry and it'll pull over to it. But if you want to go directly to it, just type in Michael Smith, no space, just michaelsmith.substack.com, and it'll take you straight there.
I'm looking at the time, and we've got some time left. We generally go for about an hour, and I was thinking, you said you lived in Africa. Now, I've never been to Africa myself, but Baden-Powell loved Africa, and he had served in the Ashanti campaign, which was, I believe, in Ghana. Mm-hmm. It was, but tell me about what it was like to live in Africa and where you lived and how long.
I was in Angola for not several months, maybe. It was a sort of an expat assignment. I went down there to take care of starting up a manufacturing facility in Angola. And Africa's an amazing country. I mean, it is the most. Oh, I don't even know how to describe the nature of that place. It is just unbelievable at the raw natural reserves that Africa has. And honestly, if they could ever get their heads together from a political standpoint and unify as a nation, then China and the U.S. would have another competitor that there's no way that they could stand up against, because the natural resources are just amazing. They have oil, they have diamonds, they have farmland, they have animals that we only see on TV. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place.
Have you been to Nigeria?
I've only passed through Nigeria.
Because I've met a fair number of Nigerians here, and it's probably this way all over Africa, but Nigerians they put a big premium on education.
Yeah.
And it's so much so that I heard that some cigarette brand named itself Student. And so people smoking it would think somehow they were students, but it's, it's a shame that countries that have, let's say, disorganized governments that are
Yep.
run by whoever's the strongest, and they're not able to keep control, and they, it, and they're not able to have law and order. But scouting's doing pretty well in a lot of
Yeah.
places. Like in Kenya, I hear it's doing pretty well, and we're hoping to get some a Kenyan on here pretty soon. And then Baden Powell, of course, he was in there in Ghana, and he was in South Africa during the Boer War, and then later he established the South African constabulary, which were like mounted policemen that
Right.
after the war, and then he retired there. As World War II was coming on, he retired there and died near Nairobi.
Yeah.
And but what a great guy, but he really loved Africa, and he admired the men of all races who served with him, whether there or in India. And so anyway,
I
it's
think
just something.
I think the biggest issue with Africa, and it's something that I've noticed in several. I've traveled to a bunch of the countries over there, and I think that the bent toward tribalism is so strong that it's very hard to unify. Even within a given country, there's so many different tribes, and there's so much loyalty and unity within the tribes that it's very difficult to get enough unity to really put together a strong, independent government that actually promotes individual liberty. It's really
Yep.
hard to do that because it's just it's a tribal culture. It always has been a tribal culture. It grew up that way. That's the way it's always been. I mean, it's like us from the United States. I mean, the moment we were founded, we were part of a Western civilization. That's how we operate. That's what we know. That's what we do. And it would be the same with us if you and I, it wouldn't matter if we're black, brown, red, whatever. If we grew up in Africa in that type of environment where tribes are the premium, then that's what we would be like. So,
Yeah. Well, some people have pointed out that went to the tendency of the Americans to align with the British because they had the common language.
yeah,
And of course,
common law, common language. Yeah,
yeah. Of course, a lot of modern Americans are descendants of Germans,
oh yeah,
a
yeah,
lot. And so that was interesting. But at any rate, we don't want to talk too much about tribalism. But I will say this is when I went to the World Jamboree in 2019, I go as Baden Powell, and I had the hat. And another guy would be Baden Powell half the time, and I'd be Baden Powell the other. But I looked like Baden Powell. And so I'd have these kids wanting their pictures, these scouts with their pictures with Baden Powell, and so I would sometimes in a country where women are not, let us say, as valued as another place, I would say to
yeah,
these girls, I say, stand up straight, head up, be proud, square back your shoulders, because someday you'll be the leaders,
yeah,
or you'll be in those positions. And then when I tell scouts, I say, look, somebody is going to be in charge when y'all are adults. So the real
yeah.
question is, what kind of people? Are
Right.
they going to be your kind of people, or is it going to be thugs and
Yeah.
people who are just rip-off artists and liars and cheats and criminals of some kind or another? And we see there's just, and then that's one thing that scouting puts an emphasis on citizenship.
Yeah.
And especially, people need to understand what law is and what their constitutions are. We're blessed in this country with a constitution that's
Yeah.
actually really nice and solid, even though it may be ignored or turned, from time to time. But a lot of countries, it's just whoever's in charge sets the rules, and that's
Yeah.
that, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, here in the United States, though, too, you mentioned something about citizenship, though, too, Walker. Citizenship has a value. I mean, it really does. And American citizenship, I remember, I can tell you from traveling all over the world that the U.S. passport is respected. I mean, I really never went anywhere that I felt uncomfortable being because I was carrying a U.S. passport. I mean, people knew not to mess with me because if anybody did and I wound up somewhere that I shouldn't be, somebody from the U.S. was coming to get me. And that kind of confidence and that kind of value of citizenship means a lot. And you take care of that kind of stuff. And, again, you get back to the 12 points of Scout Law, and you can roll all of that up into citizenship as well. I mean, all of those components, all those 12 components are strong components of being a good citizen and looking out for others and being loyal to your country and having pride in the things you do and the things your country is.
Well, you remember in that particular book you had that the old Scout handbook, we had to, when I was a Scout to begin with, we had to memorize the whole paragraph under
Oh
each
yeah,
one of those points. And
yeah,
so it says a Scout is reverent. He's reverent toward God, and he follows his religious duties, and he respects the opinions of others in matters of custom and religion.
yeah.
And it was never designed to be it was never designed to be paramilitary, and it was
No.
never designed to be Christian per se. It was a Scout is reverent toward God, and of course there's Scouts all over the world with different religious backgrounds and beliefs, and they come together, and that, Scout is friendly. He's a friend to all and a brother to every other Scout.
Yeah.
And that means all over the world. And I try to emphasize to these new scouting parents and new Scouts that, hey, it's not just you and the people in your patrol and troop and in your neighborhood. You're now part of a world brotherhood.
Yeah.
And it's just a wonderful thing, since there are millions and millions of Scouts and
Well,
former Scouts all around the world.
I've led a blessed life. There's no doubt about that. I never had the expectation that I would be able to do and see and be in the places that I've been. And to be honest with you, I'm sort of a scout by proxy, because this is I didn't learn this because it's something that somebody that made me learn and made me, sat down and said, here's this book, you got to learn it and you got to recite all this stuff. I learned it because this is the way I live. And that's what's, to me, when you and I talked a few weeks ago and started talking about the possibility of doing this podcast thing, I started really thinking about the aspects of my life that, even though I wasn't officially a Boy Scout, that fit into the Boy Scout model. And pretty much everything that I've done over my lifetime has fit into that model. And it's not because I learned it because it was a textbook that I needed to learn. It's because that's the way I live. That's the way my grandfather, my dad, my mom, my grandmother, that's the way they taught me. It's who they taught me to be. And to me, I think that's the most important thing about scouting is it's not teaching you a way to live. It's teaching you who you are.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. And helping you be the kind of person you can live with.
What that somebody would want to be friends with. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the 12 laws and you think, well, why would I not want to be friends with somebody like that?
Yeah, or for that matter, vote for somebody like that, or
Absolutely.
be that kind of a candidate. I've run for public office and as a libertarian, and so therefore I was not under any burden to lie or and to tell people what they wanted to hear. But of course, as a libertarian, you also don't get elected.
Yeah, that's true.
But so it's politics is strange, but kids need to learn that it's strange, and that people will lie to you to get your vote. I mean, that's just all there is to it. To get you to take up arms against to support the dictator.
Unfortunately, we live in an imperfect world, and the best you could do is. I think I wrote something the other day that Thomas Sowell, the famous economist, probably one of the most underrated public intellectuals in America right now.
Yes, he's a great guy.
Had said that there are no solutions; there's only trade-offs. And somebody asked me about that and what that really meant. And I said, what that really means is you choose the path that sucks the least, because that's the best you're going to be able to do. But you got to start out. You really have to start out from a place of internal strength and power, And to be honest with you, that's what, when I look at my life and I look at how that aligns with the scouting uh, um, philosophies, that's what that does. That gives me the strength and power to do the things that I've been able to do.
You know, they that somehow I keep wanting to come back to the idea of how, the Scouting America, they've changed it from Boy Scouts to Scouting America because they've integrated girls fully into the program. Of course,
Right.
girls have been in the program all over the world
Yeah.
since the beginning, practically, since the 19 teens. They had Girl Guides and things like that over in Europe, and troops that went camping beside each other and all that in Europe for years. And so, but all these qualities of a scout is brave and reverent and everything else, girls need it every bit as much as boys do.
Oh
And in
yeah.
fact, maybe more in some ways. It's that be prepared. Uh, it can be a hard world out there, and a girl needs to be ready to
Yeah.
to be
In
brave.
in many ways, I think it's harder for girls than it is for boys. I mean,
Yep.
it that girls would value and gain more value from a lot of the things that scouting teaches than maybe the boys do. I
Well,
mean, and maybe that's fair, maybe it's unfair. I don't know, but it is. That's the way the world works these days.
in the one that paragraph I learned, a scout is brave. He has the courage to face danger in spite of fear, and to stand up for the right against the threats of the coaxings of friends and the jeers or threats of enemies. And so that coaxings of friends, that's where, like teenagers, their friends are coaxing them to do stupid things,
Yeah.
or start mutilating their bodies, or something of that nature. And so that they have to have that background, that bravery to say no.
Yeah.
No is an important word.
Well, and that reminds me of another idiom that my grandfather told me is that the hardest thing you'll ever do is the right thing.
Ooh,
And
that's
and
good.
he meant that. I mean, and he's another one that lived his word. And he told me, he said, sometimes the hardest thing to do is the right thing.
Yeah, my goodness. It's wonderful to think about how blessed you and I have been
I know.
to have those kind of grandparents, and the stories they told and the lives they lived and the hard work. You and I grew up in a time when they had gone through, and our parents had gone through the Depression
Oh yeah.
and World
Yeah.
War II. And so there was all that be thrifty. A scout is thrifty.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
he saves his money so that he can pay his own way, be generous to those in need, and work and helpful toward worthy objects. And so, that, and he wastes nothing and makes the best use of his opportunities. You remember that? And it was like, you say that it's sort of like things in church or synagogue or wherever a child is raised, and they repeat in front of
Yeah.
everybody else these uh, these things like the scout law or the
Right.
or whatever, and they repeat it, and it becomes a part of who they are.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. I mean, I was doing some stuff. With moving, you move a lot of junk too. You move stuff that you've accumulated over the
yeah.
years. And I told my wife the other day, I said, you know what? I said, I finally kicked some of my depression era habits. She said, what do you mean? You didn't live through the depression. I said, no, but my grandparents and my parents did, and they taught me to save everything. My dad would look at a bolt and say, I better save that because I might have a use for it sometime. And
I
when he
was
passed
separating
away,
mine just today. I
when
was.
he passed away, he passed down a lot of his bolts to me. So I've
Yeah.
still got a bunch of stuff that's probably I've still got square-headed bolts
Yeah,
that aren't even made anymore
of course, of
that I
course.
don't know why I'm keeping, but I've still got. If you ever need one, I probably got the right size for you.
Yeah, I
My
had
my
a.
granddaddy's old farm tractor had those square-headed bolts all over it, so I've got a toolbox full of them. But I finally actually gave some stuff away and threw some stuff away a couple of weeks ago because it's just not. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
got you.
I'm not. We're not in the depression anymore. We may be, at some point in the future, but There's not a big market for square-headed bulls out there right now.
Yeah, I've got a real heavy pecan workbench with a metal front that my father bought right after World War II. And so I've got it, so the
Yep.
thing's older than I am.
I,
And a
I've
drill
got all my
press that's older than I am.
I've got all my granddaddy's blacksmithing tools. I don't know what the heck I'll ever do with any of them, but I've got
Bring them to Camp Thunder. We
them.
we're gonna have we have blacksmithing at Camp Thunder in Georgia, and I was trying to get a friend of mine to sell or give me some old anvils and things he has, some blacksmithing stuff, so I could take it down to Camp Thunder.
I guess if I ever need to shoe a horse, I'm ready to do that. So
yeah, you probably could too.
yeah.
I imagine. Did you do much horseback riding when you were a kid?
Fair amount. My granddad kept mules, and he had a couple of horses too. So we did ride a fair amount when I was a kid. My dad never really liked them because they cost too much to keep fed.
Yeah.
And so I never had them there, but I did ride the ones my granddaddy had.
Yeah, I've rode horses 2 and 3 times a week for about 15 years down in Pike County, and I really liked it. And that's one thing I think a lot of kids that grow up in the city, they've never met a horse, not really, and and they've never. There's something about being around animals. You know who that lady? She was on one of our podcasts, Molly Englehart.
Mm-hmm.
And so Molly was, she writes all this about animals and how, we may eat them, but that doesn't mean we should treat them badly or raise them in bad circumstances. And
right
now I keep chickens, and it's a money loser, but I love having chickens.
Yeah.
And eating good fresh eggs and all that. It's just a wonderful thing. I assume back when you were a kid and you were out there with your shotgun and camping by yourself, that you would kill and eat things.
We did. We didn't hunt for really. I mean, we hunted for sport, but we didn't hunt for sport and leave if we fished, we ate the fish. If we squirrel hunted, we ate the squirrels. If we deer hunted, we ate the deer. I mean, we just didn't waste anything. I mean, we went with a purpose.
Yeah, well, the kids. How many children these days have ever skinned an animal or plucked a chicken?
Scalded a hog and butchered a hog and put up ham and hand ground sausage and seasoned everything with sage and salt and all that stuff. I mean, there's so many things that I still know how to do that my kids will never have any idea how to do.
I saw a thing not long ago, that fellow Jeffrey Tucker, that sometimes I send you stuff he's written.
Yeah.
Maybe it was he that said it, but America needs 60,000 cowboys. And you think, what's a cowboy? And you think a cowboy's got to know horses, and he's got to know cows, and he's got to work outdoors in all kinds of weather. I mean, and it's not something that you or I could even just run out and be a cowboy tomorrow. Now, you and I'd have a shorter learning curve, but 60,000 cowboys are needed, and I think 500 or 800,000 electricians are needed.
Oh yeah.
And welders. I mean, boy.
Listen, I can tell you that from experience here over the past few weeks of trying to find people to do work here at the house of stuff that I'm not licensed or not well enough, knowledgeable enough to actually do. Finding a contractor and finding electricians and plumbers and stuff like that. I mean, it's not easy.
I'll tell you another thing. It's not easy to find people who can work concrete properly too. Golly, that's, they think, there's a lot of guys think they can, but then it ends up wavy and puddling in water and all that.
Yeah.
I keep looking at my computer and we're reaching the end. So Michael, why don't you just, we've already covered the kind of things I'm so glad we covered, because it goes to philosophy. And if anybody wants more of this, more of Michael, then look up Unlicensed Punditry and read his stuff. You'll really enjoy it. There's a lot of it, but You'll like it. So, Michael, what's your last word for our friends that are listening all around the world?
Last word for everybody around the world is be prepared. I mean, again, I'm not actually doing this because Walker invited me on and to talk about scouting, but that is, you know, in all things, you should be prepared. Never, again, like my grandfather told me, never stop learning, never stop moving forward. It doesn't matter how old or how young you are. There's always something new out there. And I can tell you, I learn something new just about every single day. I've had a lot of opportunities that I never thought I would have that I learned a lot from, but it makes a person better to know rather than not to know.
Yeah.
And I've searched for that knowledge for my entire life, and probably will until they put me in the ground. That's just who I
All
am.
right. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Walker. Thank you so much for taking the time and having me on. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Let's see if he's ready to tune us out. We have
Cut us off.
we have a little music thing that like that we started with. You notice it was bagpipe music that we started
Yeah, oh yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And, you know, I play bagpipes, right? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, we're going to keep talking.
Well, living in Edinburgh for 3 years, I heard a lot of bagpipes.
I bet. You know, I'm in the Burns Club of Atlanta, the Robert Burns Club, and as you probably remember,
I went to bird supper every single year when we were over there.
Yeah, and I write poetry and that sort of stuff. So, anybody out there if you want to, before he cuts us off, here's one of my books, Second Sight. All right. Let's see. I wonder if he's gone.